Recording now.
Good morning, good afternoon or good evening, depending what time you're looking at this. You can see the title of the show. It's 20 slides, and this is purely airmail that is either flown within British Borneo or actually flown from British Borneo. So it doesn't include any of the commercial flights by KLM or Imperial. And you can see there the three areas that I'm going to be talking about, starting at 1926 and actually finishing at 1930. So it's just the 4 years covered, very much pioneer flights within Borneo. My reference for all these is The Airmails of Sarawak by John Rogers, a superb book. And if you're at all interested in the airmails in Sarawak, I do recommend it very strongly. And I do have a few copies left if you'd like to email me. So on to the presentation. Air Survey Company in Sarawak. They carried the first mail in British Borneo. They were actually invited over by the Raja to actually do a survey in the Miri area, which was just being developed for oil. And he asked them also to actually then go to the Lijang Delta and actually do some surveying there, a very important river in Sarawak. And this is from the first flight. There were very few actually carried. I think it was about 30. And a lot of it was, in fact, official mail, not very much in the way of philatelic mail, because these things tended to be only notified a day ahead. And we've got a copy of a photograph here, which is the bag of mail which would have contained this envelope, going to be handed to Mr. Raymond, flying the plane, and there he is receiving the bag. And this is the plane they were using, which is presumably second-hand DH-9. There were a lot of these left over from the First World War and available very cheaply. And here's their plane, and it's being fitted with floats because there were no airstrips within Borneo at that time. Excuse me. And you can see there's the pilots, and they are looking very young indeed. And this is the second mail-carrying flight. One of the few covers which are actually signed by the pilot and the founder of the Air Survey Company. And that's the company's fuel dump or fuel storage area in Cebu. And this is an aerial view of Cebu, and there's the Lijang River and the delta there. Third mail carrying flight. So this is when they were coming back from Kuching to Singapore to their base. And this is actually being self-addressed to the pilot, Raymond. And the flight back was via Pontianak in Dutch East Indies and Muntok, wherever that is. So it's about 100 mostly commercial letters. And there we have, and there was a special airmail cachet was actually produced for this flight. And that's a copy of the memo from the postmaster to the Raja, informing him that he's had this special CDS produced to commemorate that flight. And some years later, the Raja thought, well, that worked quite well. Airmails were flown, and why not have offer a Sarawak government air service to actually carry mail and also to carry government officers. And so a two-seater airplane was, two of these were ordered, and this was the Moth. Now, this is advertised in one of the airmail magazines at the time as the best light airplane in the world. And it was suggested there's room for two persons, a fortnight's luggage and golf clubs. So this was doing a short hops in the home counties. Now, of course, flying in the home counties is not quite the same as flying in the tropics. And as there were no airstrips, these planes had to be fitted with floats, which made them even less airworthy. This is the first mail carrying. There have been several flights before this, but this is the first mail carrying flight, 11th of January 1929. A lot of this mail was philatelic. Anyway, this ended in, well, not disaster, but an accident. The Royalist, which was one of the two planes, hit an overhead wire as it was coming into land from Kuching to Semangang. Nobody had actually told the pilot, apparently, that there was this plane, this overhead wire has actually existed, as though very unfortunate indeed. Anyway, the mail was recovered and the pilot was unhurt, but the plane was written off. So now they're down to one plane only. So there were 3 more mail flights during January and February before service was abandoned. Mail from the second flight I have not got, and none has been recorded from the 4th flight, although apparently it did carry mail. So I've just got this 3rd flight here. Once again, official mail. This was carried by the Venus, and there was no special CDS, but there's a cachet of the Government Air Service Sarawak, which has been applied. 35 letters were carried and there's no air fee. And then we come on to the 5th and final flight. So this is when the plane, which had been given to Phillips, the pilot, presumably there had been a contract and the contract couldn't be honoured. And so he was given the plane, them off, and he flew this back to Singapore, or he wanted to. But there was a storm which forced him to land at Pontianak in the Dutch East Indies, where the plane was put on a ship to Singapore, which is really underlining that these planes were not really fit for the job. And that was the end of the Sarawak Government Air Service, unfortunately. A brave try, but didn't come to much. Now we've gone on to the RAF flights. This is pages from a promotion leaflet produced by the Supermarine Aviation Limited, who built the Southampton Mark II flying boats and for the Far East flight of the RAF. And 4 of these flying boats were actually flown out in very easy stages to Singapore. And these rather fascinating pages from a leaflet, which is my thanks to Claire Scott, for this is scans of the leaflet she owns. I'd love to own one of these, but I've never seen one. Here we see the crews of the 4 flying boats and some very nice pictures of the flying boats and where they are being built and as they are being built, as you can see at the bottom here. Now, one thing you can see about these planes is they've got an open cockpit, which must be very unfortunate if you're flying through a tropical storm. Rather uncomfortable, I would have thought. This is the Borneo. I'm now going to talk about the Borneo tour. So the RAF Far East flight was renamed the 205 Squadron when it got to Singapore, based at Seletar, which is the flying boat base, from 1929. So this was a first of a large number of survey flights around the coast of British Borneo, many of which carried mail. I'll talk about that a bit later. And so this is this first tour. It was not only, it was flying the flag as much as anything, as actually doing the job of actually surveying possible places where boats could be moored. It's about 400 miles from Singapore to Kuching, as you can see. And the survey went into North Borneo and into Brunei. So this is the first stage. So this is going from Kuching to Miri via Cebu. 110 letters. A lot of those were philatelic. We have 26 registered items. And this cover addressed to Cebu, It's been signed by the second pilot, Flight Officer Grierson. There was an air fee charge for these, in addition to the normal surface rate of 4 cents. And we've got also the address to Miri as well as the Cebu. So we're going to Miri via Cebu. So these are two of the philatelic covers that were carried. Now this is the second stage, and here you see a copy of a photograph, the boat moored at Miri, and you see a close-up of the boat there with these open cockpits. It was very much a sort of canvas wood construction, and flying from Jesselton, from Miri to Jesselton via Brunei. And this is a post office notice, which is talking about the flight from Kuching to Miri and Cebu, giving you the last dates for registered mail and mail. And it's been endorsed by hand that the boat actually left Kuching the following day at 8 o'clock in the morning. How these very flimsy, very cheaply produced on very cheap paper have actually survived all of the, well, how many long, talking about now, 90 odd years is rather incredible, but there are quite a few of these around. So this is now continuing into North Borneo, flying on the 3rd of June to Jesselton, from Jesselton to Kudat, and then from Kudat to Sandakan. And while the planes were in North Borneo, they carried a special cachet, which the stamps were actually cancelled with, as you can see, which was a design of a plane with airmail and North Borneo above and below the silhouette of the plane. And I say this cachet was, this stamper was actually carried on the plane, so it was applied at each of the stops. When I say this one is addressed to Lord Newton Wade, who was a postmaster and a collector, I understand. So this is carrying on to Sandakan to Tawau, and then on the way back from Sandakan to Kudat, and then on to Jesselton. They did actually go into Brunei, but I haven't got any covers from that flight. You have been shown some of those by Claire Scott. They are very scarce indeed. Both addressed to Newton Wade, but the one to Jesselton has been signed endorsed by J.C. Fenton, who's the acting Postmaster General while Newton Wade was away on leave. Very much over Frank, that one. And then we continue on. Now the seaplanes returning from Labuan and Brunei to Sarawak. Mail was carried from Brunei, but haven't got any of those. Air fee at 10 cents plus a local letter rate. Nothing much to be said about these, I don't think. This one has been signed by, oh yeah, second pilot again, Grierson. And Borneo tour, May to July 1930. This is going from Cebu to Kuching, and then from Kuching to Singapore. We've got the waybill here, which is actually giving a record of what's actually being carried from Cebu on its way to Kuching. So it's one bag of mail, being signed by the pilot Livok, and there's a registered cover to the Charter Bank Singapore. It looks like I'm going to have to readjust this slide, for somehow these have got and raised themselves up and now carrying a part of the writing. These things, I'm afraid, tend to happen, at least to me. And once again, we've got the post office mails list from Kuching, which is recording that there's going to be a flight. And this is mail course, are actually going to everywhere via Singapore. And there's no air fee charged for this. It's just saying if you're late, it'll go by late fee and you'll have to pay an extra 10 cents. But other than that, there is no air fee at all. And here's a couple of covers from going from Kuching to Singapore. We've got a 2-cent postal stationery card, which has been additionally franked to pay for the charge going to Singapore. This 2-cent charge was for an internal rate, I understand. Philatelic, it's going to be sent to a fictitious person at the GPO Singapore. Not surprisingly, couldn't be delivered and has been returned to the Kuching post office via the Singapore dead letter office, which you don't often see, certainly on mail from Sarawak. So rather a nice item, but highly philatelic. Oops. Next. And that is the end of that part of my presentation. I do continue on second half, which hopefully will be recorded, so will be available for you to watch. It is the rest of the RAF, well, a few of the RAF flights up to 1939, the last flight, and then another couple of airmail flights ending at 1941. So thank you very much for watching. That's my email address if you want to get in touch. And obviously this is under the good offices of the Sarawak Specialist Society. And that's, you can see what we are interested in. It's not only Sarawak and stamps and postal history of these British Borneo and also Sabah, east of Malaysia. So thank you very much indeed. I end my presentation here.